Hey, what's up everyone? Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to the fish room. So today we're going to be addressing some common questions that you guys have had over the last couple years regarding CO2 scrubbers, the attachment that I sell. Do you need to bypass the venturi? Do I need a collection container? How does this all work? I'm going to try to address it as quickly as possible and hopefully guide you guys in the right direction. So let's go ahead and look at the CO2 scrubber and the attachment that I have here on the 300-gallon reef. And let me give you a quick rundown on how this works for those of you who are kind of like, what are we looking at here? And then we'll get into all the questions. So real quick, we have a DIY or do-it-yourself Phosphane 550 CO2 scrubber. Now, CO2 scrubbers have been very popular over the last couple years because they remove carbon monoxide from our setup and increases the pH. So if you have carbon monoxide in the tank, you're going to have a lower pH. So by removing that through the skimming process, you can increase the pH. And everybody knows that higher pH equals more growth. Just how it is. It's been proven, and that's how it works. So with that, CO2 scrubbers have been very popular. And before I created the attachment that we're going to talk about in just a second, sorry, fingers are not lined up on the camera. Before we had that, we just simply took our pump from our skimmer, we attached it to our reactor, and we pulled air from the surrounding room. Now that worked just fine, no issues. The only problem is that we ended up burning up the CO2 media much faster. And with that, the CO2 media is not cheap. This stuff is not the cheapest stuff on the market. It's not like your carbon or your GFO. It's definitely a little bit more expensive. So we burned that up pretty quickly. So what I went ahead and did is I created an attachment which bridges the gap between the lid and the cup of the skimmer, and basically allowing us to recirculate the same air within the skimmer over and over again, never pulling air from outside, never getting that additional CO2, prolonging the life of the media. A lot of people are getting results of double, if not triple, the amount of time the media takes to burn up, which is perfect given that we're in a hobby that's extremely expensive. So if we can elevate our pH for 1/3 the price than it was before with just a simple attachment, then why not do it, right? So with that said, the attachment, we do offer about what, I think we're at like 115 to 120 different models over the last couple years. And shout out to everybody who sent in a lid for me to make the model. It's been a process, and I really do appreciate it. Now, when it comes to the attachment, it's very simple. It's going to click or clip on top of your skimmer lid, or yeah, the skimmer lid and the cup. It's just going to bridge the gap. It's 20 millimeters. It's not very tall. Basically enough for me to fit the barb, which is a 1/2 barb on most, or a 3/8 barb. Just enough room for that to fit in there, and that way you're not messing up your net cleaners or your float valves or any sensors like that. That's basically why it's so thin. Now, again, each attachment will clip on to the specific model, so you got to make sure your model's on the website. If not, you can always order the custom and send in your model, and we can take care of it for you. Each attachment will come with plugs, and that's one of the main questions that I get. Do I need to put plugs on my skimmer, or can I leave it wide open? Well, since the whole purpose of the attachment is to enclose the system, yes, you need plugs, and yes, they come with plugs. So just look on the pictures. There are some, like the Aquamax, there are a couple versions that have different plugs. Just make sure you look at the pictures and make sure the plugs match up your given skimmer lid, because they've changed up their models a little bit that I've noticed. So with that said, yes, you do get plugs. Yes, you do need the plugs, and that will make sure the system is enclosed. They will snap in place. You can glue them if you want. You don't have to. Some people do, but most of the time, depending on how the lid is, they fit in just great. Now, one thing that I have noticed, because I've dealt with thousands of skimmers and orders at this point, sometimes, depending on the manufacturer, there's only a couple manufacturers, and I'm not going to drop any names here. There's a couple of them that don't always cut the lid the same way. I know that a lot of this stuff is machine made, but sometimes it's not always the same way. So I've built the attachments in a way that it does give us some wiggle room. So if your lid's a little loose, that's okay, as long as it's not falling off. The weight of the lid alone will be enough. That's just so I can give and take some of the adjustments and some of the differences in the manufacturing process. So keep that in mind. But 99% of the time, everything snaps in place, no issues. But if you do have a problem, feel free to hit me up on the website. Now, when it comes to some accessories and how this thing attaches for efficiency-wise, over the last couple of years, people have come to me with an issue. And the issue is, and this is another question, is what do I do if the bubbles are getting too high in my skimmer and those bubbles are going down the tube? You can see there's a little bit of precipitation here. What happens if those bubbles and that skimming gets down the tube into my CO2 scrubber? Well, for one, we never want to get too much water into the media, and we definitely don't want our reactor to ever get overflown and dumped back into our tank. We never want that to happen. So one of the solutions that I've come up with is the CO2 scrubber collection container. So it's this little container here. Hopefully you guys can see it. I'm trying to get around here. And I have a wall mount or a rimless mount that you can get as well. What this does is it actually takes the air coming out of the skimmer and it goes into the collection container, and any kind of precipitation or water will fall into the container, and then the air just finds its way back up to the CO2 scrubber. And this is so you can avoid getting any kind of microbubbles or anything into the attachment. Now, this is a precaution. It's going to help you out, but if your skimmer is overflowing and going super crazy and your lid is overflowing, nothing's going to save you at that point. So there's a couple things you can do to make sure that never happens. So the first thing is make sure you have a drain, okay? On this I have a drain that goes out the bottom and comes over here to my Avast Marine collection container, which has a sensor on it, which is also connected to my Apex. So what this does is, if for whatever reason, if I feed something and it overflows and the cup goes crazy and somehow fills up the entire 5-gallon collection container, which I've done before, it will trigger an alarm and it will shut off the skimmer. So if you're going to use an attachment, I definitely recommend you have some kind of collection container for the Skimate, and make sure it has a way to be, a sensor for it to shut off just in case your skimmer overflows, because you never know. We might dump a chemical in, we might overfeed, or something goes crazy. We want to make sure we can turn our skimmer off if it ever overflows. That way we do not get this media wet and dumped into our tank, because we don't want that. That's going to be very bad. Now, that's the main thing you should do when it comes to backup system in general. But if you're getting a little bit of precipitation, you can always add the collection container. That will take care of most of it. But again, if you're overflowing your skimmer, there's no collection container or no method that's going to save you. You just got to make sure that never happens by implementing the automatic shut off with our drain container, okay, with our Apex. Now, let me go ahead and get my little questions out here so we're on the same page. The next thing is, do I need to bypass the Venturi? And that's going to be this plastic container or device or looking thing right here. So basically, for me, I don't need to bypass it because I have 2 pumps that come through the bottom, and then I go to a single outlet for my CO2 scrubber. Now, if you have a single pump, you can bypass the Venturi all the time. The point of it is just to kind of silence it so it doesn't make as much noise. Plus, you can dial the air and all that kind of stuff with the Venturi. But if you have a single pump, you can simply bypass the Venturi altogether and go directly to your CO2 scrubber. So you can get a coupling that I offer, which basically takes the tubing from your skimmer, and you can just attach it to the tubing, bypassing that whole thing, and you don't have to worry about it altogether. All right. Now, if you have 2 pumps, you can buy I don't think I offer it at the moment, like a dual barb to a single barb. It might be something I'll work on in the future, or maybe I do offer it. I don't know. There's a bunch of stuff on there. I might actually offer a solution to that. But either way, if you want to bypass both pumps, you can. But for me personally, it's not really a big deal. They fit in there perfectly, and then I have the connection on the top, so it's not really a problem. Let's go ahead and see what else we have here, question-wise. Running out of time. Collection container, we talked about that. We talked about, do you need plugs? We got the plugs, the Venturi, good deal on that. And we talked about the Skimate. I think that's pretty much it. Other than that, I don't really think there's anything else. If you're really just kind of getting into this for the first time, I definitely recommend the DIY version, because DIY is always fun if that's your thing. It's not for everybody. If you want to go buy something like the ice cap, you can. One thing I do recommend is, if you are ordering a CO2 scrubber and an attachment, make sure you match the same barb size. Make sure, like for example, the ice caps have 3/8, make sure your CO2 attachment has 3/8, because the whole setup is you're going to go from the attachment to either a collection container or directly to your CO2 scrubber, and then that's going to go back down to the pump. Okay, so your pump's going to be pulling air through the attachment and then kind of pulling all that stuff in. Okay, so that's kind of the whole setup, and seems to be the most effective way and how it's worked for me over the last couple of years. Other than that, I think that's it. If you guys have any other questions that you want to add, feel free to put that stuff in the comment section. I'm sure I missed something, because it's just kind of I don't have scripts. I just have like a general list. Yeah, maybe I should outline my videos better. But either way, that's it for this one, guys. Again, any questions, let me know, and I'll see you later. All right, peace.